today. Kevin Hincks, co-host of Fast Market Live at the CBOE, is with me. So we'll start with his lighter than expected inflation print. Some of your thoughts. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Nicole. And hold on there with the, because I think the market is getting it slightly wrong on the CPI data, and I'll explain why. First and foremost, the headline CPI data up 0.2 year over year, up 2.7%. That's in line with last month and a tenth lower than expectations. Great number there. The core, however, up 0.3 on month over month and 3.1% year over year. That's 0.2 higher than last month and a tenth higher than expectations. Here's the problem with this number that the market might be getting slightly wrong, Nicole, and that is every single line on the ex-food and energy core was higher this month. But the headline number, which is the number that a lot of people look at and will make the news headline, that was dominated by lower energy prices. Here's the numbers that we came up with for energy. Energy down 1.1%, gasoline down 2.2%, electricity down 0.1%, and natural gas down 0.9%. Now, that's all great, and that's that product of the move in crude oil and natural gas, and all energy products are lower. That being said, everything in the ex-food and energy was higher. Airfares up 4%, medical services up 0.7%, dental services up 2.6%, shelter up 0.2%, owner's equivalent rent up 0.3%, and rent up 0.3%. Lodging away from home actually was down 1%. But here's the thing, Nicole. The headline is going to look good, but the core that the Fed looks at, because it takes out the volatility of energy, was actually higher and stronger than expected. And like I said, every single line in the ex-food and energy was higher month over month. So I think this number is great because of what the Trump administration is doing to lower energy prices. And that will filter to so many companies. But ex-food and energy, all the prices were higher month over month, Nicole.
Right. You know what? I think the Fed combs through the core number, too, because that's the important number. I mean, you mentioned a few of the things, airfare and shelter. I mean, that is a huge one, and that never seems to give up and still has an up arrow. When will be the day that we have a shelter with a down arrow? Also, used vehicles was higher. Home furnishings was higher. As you mentioned, a few of these medical services, dental services. So it shows that inflation is sticky. And this is why so many fund managers, I saw something yesterday, it said like 7 out of 11, or I don't know, fund managers. It was some survey, but basically most of the people managing money are concerned about stagflation. And that is slower growth. You still have unemployment of 4.2%. That's okay. It's not a terrible number. It's fine. That's good. But you have sticky inflation, and you're not going to have growth, and you're not going to have anything moving, right? And this is what the Fed looks at, this core number.
Yeah, in its totality, the number is the number, right? And gasoline and energy are all part of prices month over month. But this is a number that's kind of mixed, right? The headline was lower or in line at 2.7%. But the core jumped up 0.2 to 3.1%. A 3 handle on core CPI is not what the Fed's looking for. Now, hopefully, it's just a couple months and it's firming and it'll correct over time. But these numbers, in terms of the core number, not that great, Nicole.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we also don't know the tariff situation. And while the Fed has a lot of pressure to cut, one thing that Jay Powell has said, and it hasn't really reared its head. I mean, some of the tariffs have gone into effect and some others will do so and so forth, and there's still negotiations. We haven't really seen extreme inflation because of tariffs. However, don't think that Jay Powell isn't worried that tariffs will cause inflation, and that's why he's so apprehensive to cut rates.
Well, there's the big out trade, right, between some economists and really what Jerome Powell's thinking. He thinks Jerome Powell thinks, and he has stated this on the record, that tariffs could cause inflation. Well, some economists think that tariffs are a tax and therefore not inflationary, and in some cases deflationary because higher taxes. And there's the big disconnect between the Jerome Powell Fed and other economists. Is it a tax? Is it a one-time bump that won't continue higher? Or is it inflationary? That's the big discussion going on between economists right now, Nicole.
Let's get to the most anticlimactic, biggest news, so not big news, and that is that Trump has announced a 90-day extension of the U.S. policy on China. I mean, he's made it so obvious that he didn't want 145% tariffs on China. And so when that date was coming up, people began to get extremely nervous, and rightfully so. But I was not surprised at all to see yesterday afternoon that extension's here. What did you think?
No, and here's why. Everyone should think that negotiations between the two biggest economies in the world aren't going to be done in 90 days. And the concessions that the U.S. is looking for China to give up aren't going to be given up easily. So, yes, no one thought that they were going to put these, tariffs of over 100% in place. So another 90-day extension as they continue to meet and negotiate is pretty much expected by the market. I knew very few people who actually thought it was going to be in place. And sure enough, President Trump extended it for another 90 days to negotiate. So now mark that one on the calendar, Nicole. Here comes that's the next big date on our calendar.
So we heard yesterday about the pay to play, pay for the license, pay for the access, whatever you want to call it. Nvidia and AMD had agreed to give 15% of their revenue on the chips sold to China. And so that seemed to be fine. Apparently, Jensen Huang had been working with Trump. Trump asked for 20% and Jensen said 15%. They agreed and that was done. I think there's concern now from China about Nvidia chips, right? We talk about national security here at home. They have their own concerns, according to a Bloomberg report. What do you think about that? And where do Nvidia stock has been doing incredibly well, no doubt. I mean, let me just look at the stock for a moment to see where we stand here. Look, it's still incredible. It's not at the highs, but near the highs. The highs were 183. That's exactly where we are.
So, Nicole, what has come out overnight in the last 24 hours is Beijing has urged local companies to avoid using NVIDIA's H20 processors, particularly for government-related purposes. So, and that, remember, we're just opening up sales to China, and now the Chinese government is saying don't use them. Now, other things. Over the past few weeks, Chinese authorities have sent notices to a range of firms discouraging the use of the less advanced semiconductors. So they say, and this is the basis for a lot of this. Once the Chinese chips, their homemade chips, catch up in technology to the Nvidia chips, then it's a moot point to not sell them because they have the own. So now President Trump wants to allow Nvidia to compete with the homemade Chinese chips. There's the essence, and AMD as well. So now that they're on equal footing, like I said, the Chinese government has told their companies to avoid using the Nvidia. Now they didn't come out and ban them, but they suggested they don't use the Nvidia chips. We'll see how that plays out over time, Nicole.
Yeah, how about what's going on with Elon Musk? He doesn't like that xAI. He's made his efforts, but not able to get anything related to AI on Apple's top spot unless it's OpenAI, and he's ready to sue, and he's threatening to sue because he feels that Apple's running some sort of monopoly, right? That's basically what he's saying.
He thinks that Apple is putting their finger on the scale. And here's his quote. Apple is behaving in a manner that makes it impossible for any AI company besides OpenAI to reach number one in the App Store, which is an unequivocal antitrust violation. He thinks that X is now the number one news platform, and Grok is the #1 AI platform, yet they're being held back from the most wanted on Apple's App Store. So that's what he's saying. He put it out on X last night. He's threatening to sue. So we'll see how that plays out over time. This was just breaking last night in the early evening that he started putting out tweets like this. So we'll watch, Apple. He's accusing Apple of basically, putting their finger on the scale and holding back the advances of Grok and X on the App Store platform. So, another chapter in Elon Musk defending his companies against what he feels is unfair treatment from the App Store, Nicole.
Yeah. And look, Kevin, we used our time. We're out of time. We cannot keep chatting. But friends,
we got to go longer.
We
have to go longer.
Friends, I just want to tell you one more thing that Kevin and I were due to speak about, but we're not going to, and that is in July, there was a notable improvement in the small business survey, the optimism survey, that went up 1.7 point to 100.3, and that is above the 52-year average of 98. And so business health, many were 13% said excellent, 52% said good, and then there was fair and poor, which were less than that first group. So that was good news. I like hearing that. Kevin Hincks, thank you. Great to see you. I know you're busy working there at the CBOE.